Hello, this is Edith Neumeyer, and I am the author of the book, The Mystery of Adam. Hope you can see that. There we go. Today is part 3 of my introduction to my book, and I just want to kind of go back to let you know a little bit what I discussed in the first 2 parts. It's very important that we all kind of know and start with the understanding that the first human being was not a man, but a human being. Human being that included both sexes. Now I know that's very hard to understand because we've been indoctrinated for so many thousands of years to believe that the first human being was a man. Now I don't know if Abraham even believed that. However, since we kind of know a recorded history, at least for the past 2,000 years, since Christianity, we have been taught that that first human being was a man. The old sages or the old rabbis, the pre-Christian rabbis, they knew that that first human being was actually a man and a woman, and that the man and the woman did not get their distinct form until they were split, or the first human being was split. However, within the past 2,000 years, only a few Orthodox rabbis continue to know or believe that that first human being was a man and a woman at the same time. Now, there are very, very, very few Bible scholars who have been investigating into this subject. And one of them I mentioned last time, that was Phyllis Triple. And she has done a really good, I don't believe everything that she wrote in her book, God and the Rhetoric of Sexuality, but definitely the part she investigated about the first human being was excellent. And so I found her book after I started my research. So today I'm going to talk more about the split or the second creation account, when God decided to split the first human being into a man and a woman. Now God started his project, if you want to call it a project. He started it by saying it was not good that the first human being was alone. Now that word, which was translated as man, and that's why it makes things very confusing, is the word ha-adam in the Hebrew original text. Now, ha-adam was translated most of the time as man. And however, when we read that word man, we of course think about a male being. That comes up first. But we also know that man can mean human being. And it could be applied to both the man and the woman. So that word man is very confusing in the English text. So let's say maybe that God took that first human being or that first Adam and said that first Adam, it's not good for him or it or whatever you want to call it, for it to be alone. So God caused a sleep upon that first human being. Now we're going to look today at that word that he used. He said he wants to make a helper for that first human being. Now that word helper is also a very bad translation. Or maybe it is even just bad because when we translate it as helper, then the English text, the interpretation of that English word helper is usually not a very positive one. Phyllis Triple did acknowledge that. She said, and I'm going to quote from her book, she said, or she wrote, the English translation suggests an assistant, a subordinate, indeed an inferior, while the Hebrew word ezer, when that's spelled E-Z-E-R, carries no such connotation. To the contrary, in the Hebrew scripture, this word often describes God as the superior who creates and saves. So that word ezer, which they translate as helper, is really more. He is more a partner. He is more an equal. Matter of fact, she says the Hebrew word would even be used for God. And so, of course, when we use it for God, we always think then that God is superior to humankind. But I would more say that Ezer is more an equal partner in a project. So there is also another word described or used to describe that helper, and that's suitable. God said, I'm going to make a suitable helper for that first human being. And that word suitable is also kind of not very accurately translated, or maybe we should probably check into it a little more. So this guy called Dr. Carl Cook did some more research because he is a Hebrew scholar, and he said that suitable is translated as from the Hebrew word neged. That Hebrew word neged, N-E-G-E-D, is derived, is derived from the root word nagat. And that word nagat belongs to a cognate word group that conveys the meaning to the front, to the face, or actually face to face. It means to stand bodily out opposite. Now that gives a very different picture, but it also makes it very clear that this helper is more of a partner, more of an accountability partner, like a mirror. Okay, we are each other's mirror, an accountability partner. So when we look at these words in the original text, they do not show a hierarchy, or they don't show that one of them is more in charge than the other, or the other one is more important than the other. But it shows more that God had in mind a partnership when he created that helper. And that's why it kind of makes sense that there was a split in the human being. So God created two equal parts, the man and the woman. And for me, that shows clearly the equality of both sexes. Now, I know a lot of people still have a hard time understanding this. But again, remember, these lies have been ingrained in us for so many years, actually for us all our life. And so everything that we hear, that we see about the creation of that first human being uh, shaped the way we interpret the rest of the sections in the Bible about the man and the woman. So it's very important that we continue to see the creation account in the correct light. God created two equal partners, the man and the woman, in order for them to make better decisions. Well, here is another aspect that I need to bring in at this point. Now, we know that God created the first human being in his image. He created them man and woman. And he created the man and woman because God is male and female. So when God creates only a man, that man can only understand the male part of God. And therefore, God also had to create a woman in order to understand the female part of God. Now somebody always say, oh my goodness. Now she is saying that God is a female as well. Well, God is male and female. The Bible tells us that. Chapter 1, when the first human being was created, God says, let us make man in our own image, and let us make the male and female. So what does that mean? Well, that means God is male and female. Period. That's just the way it is. Okay? And as male and female, as man and woman, we reflect fully God. A man only can see the male part again of God, and the female can only see the female part of God. It is very hard for a man to understand a woman. We know that. Or it is very hard for a female to understand a man. We know that. We have problems with that. I know we all have a small part, like if I'm a female, I have a small part of maleness in me. And so there is some understanding in the same with the man. A man also has small parts of femaleness in them. They're not just rigid male. And it also depends on what kind of woman you are, what kind of man. Some men have more female traits, and some men have a lot more masculine traits. And the same thing with females. We're just not rigid, cookie cutter human beings. And so I am not saying that every woman and every man is the same. That's why it's very, very horrible to stereotype men and women. God made us a lot more flexible than what our culture wants us to be. Our culture puts us in cookie cutters. And sometimes when you are not fitting in that cookie cutter, then it becomes very difficult. Or sometimes we force people in these cookie cutters and they're not. So I don't want to go into more, depth into this problem. But the fact remains that God just split the human being in half. And that both sexes reflect God fully. So that's another important aspect of this helper that God made, or this split human being. So for today, I'm going to stop here. And then next time I will pick up where I just left over. But I think it's pretty interesting to think about these things. And if you have any interesting ideas or any ideas, period, put them in the comment section on the bottom, and I will pick up on your ideas next time. So until next time, keep studying.